This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
The Science Notes podcast on OAR FM Dunedin, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. I'm Dave McMorrin. Over the next half hour, I'll be chatting with a graduate science student about their research, their passion for science, and the things that fuel their creativity. Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of Science Notes. My name's Dave McMorrin, and this week our guest is Aimee Bartlett. Hi, Aimee.
Hi, Dave. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for coming along. So we're going to be talking about Aimee's PhD work, master's work. We did discuss this. Her master's work, which I think is following on from your honours work.
Yes.
In psychology.
Yes.
And in a particular, and as we've just been talking about, and as we will discuss, you're part of quite a big research program, really, in this particular topic, and you're doing a little part of it. So, before we get into that, then, how is it that you've ended up in this position that you're at?
How far are we going back? Like high
as
school?
Far as you like.
My science discovery.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Well. So definitely discovered my love of science back in college. So I was very lucky at Nayland College in Nelson. They had some additional science courses when you got to second level NCEA, and we were lucky enough to have psychology.
So you're actually doing an achievement standard, as it's called, in psych at school.
Yeah, in college. Luckily enough, the year that I started taking it, it became a university-approved subject. Before then it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So that was quite lucky. And in my first week of that class in year 12, I was a bit like, why have I chosen this course? What's going on here? Because my teacher had started with pseudo-psychology and like handwriting analysis and phrenology.
I was going to say, and phrenology. And yes, you did, phrenology.
Yeah, so the first week I'm like, what is all this hocus pocus? This is so random. And then she got to the end of it and explained, I was just explaining all the really weird things that have been studied in psych. We can move on to the real stuff now. So that's where it started. I kept going with that, knew I wanted to do a psych degree. I also knew I wanted to do honours at least.
Yep.
And then I met my current supervisor by attending a Meet the Faculty night in the psych department. And I heard her talking about the longitudinal study that I now am a part of, and just kind of thought that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So then, what is this longitudinal study?
So it's called Kia Tamata Pi, and it's a study that's going to go on for 6 years. We're in our 4th year now. We're about to do the 4th wave of data collection. And essentially they're implementing 2 different interventions. One is Engage, which is a self-regulation intervention, and one is Enrich, which is an oral language intervention. And these implementations are being taught in some Best Start early childhood education centres. So they're all focused on young children, and I think there are about 1,500 children included in the study.
I think 1,481 was the number in the paper that you gave me.
Yeah,
so that's plenty of data points.
Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And then my particular research is focused on the video project. So that's a subset of those kids in the Best Start centres. So we have 24 Best Start centres included in the video project, where each year we're going in and filming different routines and kind of analysing those transcripts for different things that we're interested in.
Right. So it's about developing interventions, which to my mind means something is going wrong with the way that the kids are developing that you're trying to fix. So what particular aspect of the little kids' development is it that you're concerned about in the study?
Yes, so oral language is the main focus of the Enrich intervention. So as you know, you'll probably have read a little bit about the state of literacy in New Zealand.
Yes, this was just last week, I think, there was some numbers came out that suggested that more kids were going into school with lower abilities for talking in big sentences and stuff than would be ideal.
Yes, and also I would include reading as a big part of that. Also at Nayland, I did some volunteering in the school, and I wound up in a Year 9 classroom. And the teacher that I was helping, part of my responsibilities was sitting down with certain students and reading the activities to them because they couldn't understand everything on a worksheet themselves.
Yeah.
So that's a part of my passion for education specifically. But yeah, so it's focusing on oral language development because that's a really good predictor of good academic success later on, and literacy. So
what are the sort of things that lead to kids not having the desired level of oral skills?
Well, there's quite a few things that go into it. It's not necessarily the focus of my research going into that, but just generally speaking, if parents have a lot more time to read with their children, that's obviously going to be really beneficial. My parents, they spent so much time reading with me as a kid, absolutely loved books. The same for my sister. So things like that are really important. Also being able to kind of determine what kids, at a young age aren't doing so well and could benefit from some further attention with their literacy development. It's a whole host of things.
Yeah, and I think from reading of the paper you gave me, that one of the things that seems like it's not been studied before but is a focus of what you're trying to do is the continuity of the sort of encouraging the kids to read both at school but then at home as well. So a role for both the parents and for the teachers.
Yes, no, that's true. There's quite a bit of research out there that's focused on interventions in school and at home and trying to bring them together because you need effort in both places.
Yeah.
They're both really important locations for a kid to be learning in, and really important that if you can have that on the same page, that is ideal.
Yeah, you don't want to have a situation, I suppose, where kids think that the whole reading thing is what you do at school. And then when you go home, you can just get back onto your phone or something and it doesn't matter at home. It has to be all the time. Yeah,
definitely. For the young kids who are a part of this study, when for the intervention, part of it is they've designed little prompts to have on book pages, so the teacher will go through and they'll read the book, but as they're going, they're asking different prompts of the kids to try and get them to interact with the book and kind of help with their comprehension and talking about it. And that can be a really good way to improve, a child's literacy ability and get them more interested in reading. It becomes an interactive activity rather than just sitting there and listening.
Seems like something we should be doing in lectures at university.
Yeah.
I mean, we sort of do, I suppose, at times we have sort of prompts on PowerPoint slides to encourage students to wake up and actually engage with things.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the lecturer and or the demonstrator. It's good to make sure people are paying attention.
One aspect I found interesting, and maybe I didn't properly understand this, and again, maybe this isn't exactly part of what you're doing, but the language development that the study's looking at is both English and Te Reo Māori.
Yes. So that was actually my honours project last year. So this year I'm coming at this from a more numeracy focus and seeing the effects of Enrich Plus, which starts to incorporate some numeracy focus.
I suppose I was interested. Yeah. Is it the same? Do the interventions look the same if you're trying to help the student, the wee kid, with their English skills as it is with their Te Reo skills, or is it different? Or
so they would try and include, for instance, different games that are in Te Reo Māori. We have different kind of prompt cards for serve and returns between teachers and children, and they can incorporate Te Reo Māori. And it was the same across the board. We'd try and have both versions present and have some Māori included and obviously English included, because a big part of this project is wanting to honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi and Te Whariki, which is, early childhood education policy. So it was really important to incorporate that. And last year we were analysing Te Reo Māori for my honours project and kind of seeing if Enrich was helping to booster the use of Te Reo Māori, and also just is Te Reo Māori increasing as the children are ageing in general, because obviously we had a control group and the Enrich group. So far, we didn't really find particularly strong findings that Enrich increased it more than just the general increase over time for both the control and Enrich. So that analysis is still going on. There's another master's student who's continuing that.
I mean, I wondered whether if you have kids who are, if it's better for their long-term academic success for them to have good oral skills in one language by the time they hit primary school, is it better if they have good oral skills in two languages?
Oh, that's getting into bilingualism.
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
I just wonder if being able to develop those skills in two different languages does actually set you up even better down the track.
It depends. I've done a little bit of studying on bilingualism. It wasn't my focus in the long-term effects, but my understanding is typically children will have, one a dominant language that they know better. So I think having both to a really high standard, I'm not quite sure the effects of that.
Yeah.
It's not the focus of my research. I'm just trying to remember everything I can remember from my supervisor's bilingualism lecture, but it's floating out.
All right. So anyway, enough of this. Numeracy. This is what you're actually studying this year.
Yes.
So how does the numeracy part of the program work?
Yeah, so now that we've gone past the third year of the study, Enrich has become Enrich Plus, which is starting to incorporate some aspects of numeracy talk. So that's essentially any kind of talk that's to do with numbers or mathematical concepts. So this can be, things like more or less, or to do with, spatial discussions. So is an object above something else? It's not just counting, it's a little bit more than that. So now that that's being introduced into these, prompt cards, into the books, there's like a little math sort of themed story, which is quite nice that they're including in this wave. We're just wanting to see, is numeracy talk increasing for the Enrich centres more so than for the control centres?
Right.
So that's why I'm interested in, because numeracy talk is a really good predictor of later numeracy ability. Because
even though there is just recent stuff in the media about the ability of kids going to school to speak, the concerns about numeracy have been around for a long time here.
Yes.
And they're not just at primary school or secondary school, they're at university as well.
Yeah. No, I'm a demonstrator as well, so I do mark some second year work. You still see some really amazing pieces, but then sometimes you see some that...
Yeah, I just this week in the chemistry labs I'm teaching this semester have been trying to encourage some students to divide a number by 10 in their heads. And sometimes you can win with that, and sometimes they just pull out the calculator and I go, oh, well...
Yeah. And some of it, I'm like, oh, well, they've probably not done that kind of math a lot in a while. But so we're kind of interested in looking at the combination of the effects of numeracy language and then also general literacy from Enrich as well. So we're going to be conducting this literacy assessment, which is called the PELI, and kind of we're going to compare what are the interactions there between them. How does that go? What is Enrich doing for us?
Yeah. Is the thing working? I suppose there's two questions. Is the interventions working? And is the way that you're trying to assess the effect of the interventions working as well? To try and make the study more effective.
the comparing the intervention to the control group to see, like you said, is it actually working? And yes, so that will be the focus. Haven't quite got to that stage yet. We still need to collect the next wave of data, which will be in October.
And so collecting the data for you means going out and videoing the kids, talking to just videoing them in class?
Yeah, so we are really lucky and we're able to go into the 24 early childhood education centres that are in the video project, and we film 5 minutes of interactions between the teachers and the children, because we're interested in, are the teachers using math language in the way that we're expecting, and then we're also wanting to see, are children using it as well.
Do the kids know they're being filmed?
Yes, they can see us. Yeah, it's very cute. Some of them are really interested in what you're doing. We've got some cute stories from that. So we film these 5 minutes across 5 different routines. So book time is obviously a big one. Kai time, so if they're sitting down and eating a meal, playtime, small group time, things like that. We're interested in seeing, are there differences in our findings across different contexts within those interactions.
Yep. And is this across the country or?
Yes. So for the video project, we've got some centres in Christchurch, Auckland, and also Southland. We've got a couple in, we've got one in Mosgiel that we're going to be filming at soon. And yeah.
So that means you get to travel around a bit and to do it.
Yes, we'll have to be getting some flights and staying up there for a while. But yeah, it'll be good fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
So at the end then so you're doing a 1-year master's.
Yes.
So that means you're getting close to being done.
Yes.
Sorry, I shouldn't say that. but at time of recording, it's the end of August, and so it's soon. So what then are you hoping to be able to write up?
Yeah, so essentially I'm wanting to be able to see whether numeracy talk has increased from year 3 to year 4 of the study. And then I want to compare and see if that increase is bigger for the Enrich plus intervention group versus the control group. And then I'll also look at the literacy scores on the Pally test because we have collected those at wave 3 and I'll be collecting those at wave 4 and we'll just see has there been greater increases for Enrich.
And if there has, what's the next steps for this?
Yes, so the next steps are obviously for the longitudinal study to be completed because it's meant to go for 6 years.
Yeah, so sorry,
yes.
I think it said in the paper, the idea is to see how these interventions help kids up until when they start school, but actually you're going to go back and look at them again a year later after they've started primary school, yeah?
Yes, so I believe there's one more year of data collection and then there's the follow-up year for the students who've gone into primary school. Potentially further down the road, my supervisor might be able to get approval to do a follow-up that's even further down the road because obviously it would be really amazing to see whether these effects continue through until, say, high school or even, any kind of tertiary study that these kids might go on to do. That would be ideal.
I see that one of the authors on the paper is in fact involved in the Dunedin study.
Yes.
So there is expertise there for running this for actual decades. If you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, you definitely need the expertise because longitudinal studies like this aren't very common.
No.
And we're incredibly lucky that we've been able to do it, especially in New Zealand. Obviously, the Dunedin study is very famous, but outside of that, it's relatively rare to be able to have a study like this, especially with so many children.
So the reason why you want to look at them going into school, I suppose, is because that's going to be after the interventions have stopped. So you want to see whether what you're trying to do now to help the kids actually sticks and these changes in behaviour are actually things that they take on board and carry forward with them. Yeah,
well, current research suggests that having, really good early numeracy language skills and just general language and literacy skills are really good predictors of later good academic achievement. But we obviously want to see whether the effects of our intervention are short-term or whether they can carry on and help those skills
after they
continue.
Get to, say, primary school at least, where perhaps the ways in which the teachers can encourage that sort of interaction become less and less.
Yeah, well, obviously, for their education outside of the Best Start centres, we have no control over what that looks like. So we essentially want to see whether the effects of Enrich are able to persist after they leave that environment and continue, because quite often for interventions, sometimes the effects, you fall out once you leave the intervention. They don't always continue. So that would be amazing, and I would love to know if that is able to be done. I would love to know what the outcome is.
So you've got a few more months. Sorry, I shouldn't keep going. You've got.
I'm halfway through. Halfway through.
What next after this?
Oh dear.
PhD?
I think one day. I don't think immediately. I'm a little bit schooled out potentially. unless it was going to lead me straight into a job that I was really passionate about.
Yeah.
I have started applying for some jobs, but I potentially might want to have a bit of a gap year and take a break because it has, by the time I finished, it will have been 5 years straight.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It can be easy to just stay. I mean, I know I did. Yeah. Ended up for 7.5 years.
Yes.
Pretty much without a break, and you need a break.
Yeah, I would love to do a PhD one day, and I've talked to a few people that have done PhDs in psych and are now in the later end of their career. And the advice I got was that the best PhDs they've ever seen and the people who've enjoyed them the most are people who've gone out, they've worked for a bit, and they've found a problem that they thought was really interesting.
Yep.
And then they've gone and done it, and potentially their employers have supported them.
Yeah. So they've come back to answer their own question rather than someone else's question.
I think that way you stumble across something that you have a really strong belief that it's incredibly important and valuable to study rather than just studying it for the sake of getting a PhD. I think that's how I would like to do it.
Yep.
So one day would love to. For the moment, thinking about jobs, I'm even applying for the Ministry of Education at the moment, which is quite fun to go through that process. But no hard plans. We will just finish the Masters and then potentially have a gap year.
Yeah, because you've got to write it up yet. And the writing is not always as straightforward.
Yeah, I've started. It's going to be a bit of a crunch time once we have the data because unfortunately we had to push it back for multiple different reasons. So we will get there no matter what. But yes, definitely going to be pretty hardcore few months.
Excellent. Well, that's just about us for time. Thank you, Aimee.
Thank you.
It's been really interesting hearing about what you've been up to.
Thank you.
All the best. And like you say, your part, and this isn't always the case actually in my experience, certainly in chemistry, in my experience, you're making a little contribution to a much bigger thing rather than just your little thing by yourself. So that means that even though your immediate contribution is going to finish soon, you know that the work itself continues on and you know that you've had a part in this much bigger thing. So that's kind of cool. Yeah,
definitely. And I really want to keep an eye on if someone winds up taking up the numeracy project. I'm the first person in the lab to look at numeracy. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they find and just all the other publications that are going to come out from KTP. I'm quite excited to just read more about it.
Cool. Well, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you everyone out there for listening. You've been listening to the Science Notes podcast, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. To listen again or to find other episodes in this series, go to Otago Access Radio's website, oar.org.nz, or to your favourite podcast platform.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.